When you hear the word mummy, what comes to mind? Likely the sprawling desert sands of Egypt, the golden sarcophagi of pharaohs, perhaps a whisper of ancient curses and the grand, meticulously wrapped figures of kings and queens. For centuries, the very concept of mummification has been inextricably linked to the Nile, a testament to a civilization obsessed with the eternal, with preparing their elite for a journey into the next life. But what if that iconic image, that deeply ingrained understanding, is not just incomplete, but fundamentally younger than the true origin of this profound human practice? What if the secrets of enduring the ages of cheating decay were first unlocked by people who lived millennia before the first pharaoh ever ascended a throne? Our story doesn't begin in the Fertile Crescent, but in the harsh, almost alien landscapes of the Atacama Desert, a place of such extreme aridity that it preserves without effort. This is where the Chinchorro people thrived, along the coast of what is now northern Chile, a fishing culture bound to the sea and the stark, unforgiving land. Their lives were simple, centered around the rhythm of the ocean, the bounty of its waters. Yet within this seemingly humble existence, they pioneered a science of immortality that would astonish the world, a practice born not of imperial decree, but of something far more primal, an intimate communion with death itself. Imagine a community, living in a climate so dry, so barren that death itself struggles to claim its own. Bodies laid in the sand would not decay in the typical way but would slowly desiccate, shriveling into natural mummies. For generations, the Chinchorro must have observed this phenomenon, the slow, silent transformation of their loved ones into enduring forms. It was a daily, stark reminder of mortality, yet also a subtle suggestion of permanence. Then something shifted. We cannot pinpoint the exact moment, the specific individual, or the precise sun-baked dune where it happened, but at some point a profound leap occurred. They moved beyond merely observing natural preservation. They began to assist it. They intervened. This wasn't just about accepting nature's hand, it was about improving upon it, about asserting human will over the inevitable. This was the birth of artificial mummification, a revolutionary act of defiance against the finality of death, tracing its origins back to an astonishing 7020 BCE. The oldest purposefully preserved Chinchorro mummy dates to around 5050 BCE, a figure that dwarfs the timeline of even the earliest Egyptian mummies by up to 2,000 years. In the grand narratives of ancient Egypt, mummification was a privilege, a sacred rite reserved almost exclusively for royalty, for priests, for the powerful elite. It was a marker of status, a divine passport to the afterlife, ensuring that those who ruled in life would rule in death. The myth was clear: immortality was a currency purchased by power and position. But among the Chinchorro, a different myth, a different truth unfolded. Their bodies tell a story of profound egalitarianism. Here, every life was deemed worthy of preservation. Men, women, the elderly, children, even infants, even miscarried fetuses, all were afforded the same meticulous care, the same journey into the sculpted embrace of eternity. There was no social stratification in death. Every soul held equal weight in the Chinchorro cosmos. What does this tell us? It suggests a society bound not by rigid hierarchy, but by a deep, collective reverence for life itself, for ancestry, for the unbroken chain of community. The symbolic explanation is clear. This wasn't about projecting status into the afterlife. It was about holding on to every single member of the tribe, about keeping the essence of their loved ones present, tangible within the living community. Each preserved body was a link to the past, a silent guardian, a constant reminder of who they were and where they came from. It was an act of profound grief, yes, but also an act of profound love and communal solidarity, an assertion that no one, absolutely no one, was expendable, even in death. Over 3,500 years, the Chinchorro refined their craft, evolving their techniques with an empirical brilliance that speaks volumes about their dedication. Their early methods, known as the Black Mummy technique, dating from around 5000 to 3000 BCE, were astonishingly intricate. It was a process of complete reconstruction. The body would be dismembered, the skin peeled back, and all internal organs, along with the flesh, meticulously removed. The bones, stripped clean, were often reinforced with sticks and reeds, sometimes even clay. Then the body was painstakingly reassembled, filled with plant fibers, animal hair, and clay, restoring its original form and volume. The skin, or sometimes a new layer of clay and ash, would be reapplied, and the entire figure would then be covered in a rich, dark manganese paste, giving it a striking, almost sculptural black finish. Eyes and mouths were often stylized, sometimes with a clay mask, giving each mummy a unique, almost watchful presence. This wasn't merely preservation. It was an act of artistic recreation, a re-engineering of the human form to achieve a specific aesthetic and spiritual purpose. It was a monumental undertaking, requiring specialized knowledge, tools, and a deep understanding of anatomy and preservation. It speaks to a cultural commitment so profound, so ingrained, that the labor-intensive process was carried out consistently, generation after generation. Later, around 2500 to 2000 BCE, their methods evolved into the red mummy technique. This involved a slightly less invasive approach. Incisions were made to remove organs, the body was then carefully dried, and the internal cavity was filled. The skin was often left intact, and the entire form was painted with a vibrant red ochre, sometimes with a black face mask, creating a stark and equally powerful aesthetic. This shift from the black reconstruction to the red surface treatment demonstrates an ongoing experimentation, a continuous quest for the most effective and perhaps most symbolically resonant means of honoring their dead. It wasn't just a science, it was an evolving art form, a living tradition that adapted and grew over millennia. While the Chinchorro perfected their art along the Pacific coast, thousands of miles away on the banks of the Nile, another story of preservation was quietly unfolding, predating the Grand Pyramids and the Golden Age of Pharaohs by centuries. For a long time, it was believed that sophisticated embalming in Egypt was a relatively late development, coinciding with the rise of dynastic power. But recent research has painted a different, equally compelling picture. Intentional embalming in ancient Egypt, the deliberate application of scientific preservation, began far earlier than we once imagined. Evidence now pushes this timeline back to approximately 4300 BCE. This means that long before the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, before the first pharaoh ruled over a unified kingdom, the prehistoric Egyptians, living in what we might call a tribal society, had already begun to unlock the secrets of mummification. Their sheltered upbringing was the natural desert, which, like the Atacama, offered glimpses of natural preservation. But their specific event, their own intellectual spark, was the development of a sophisticated empirical science. This wasn't accidental preservation in the desert sands anymore, this was science. They had developed a complex recipe for embalming. Imagine a world without written language for such intricate details, where knowledge was passed down through generations through observation and practice. Their formula included a careful blend of plant oil or animal fat, conifer resin likely imported, indicating early trade and resourcefulness, aromatic plant extracts, and powerful antibacterial agents. This wasn't merely about drying a body, it was about chemically arresting decay, about perfuming and preserving the flesh with a precision that speaks of deep empirical understanding. This pre-dynastic embalming was a transformative moment for early Egyptian society. It signifies a profound shift in their understanding of death, the afterlife, and the human body's role within that journey. It was a cultural breakthrough, an assertion of control over mortality, a precursor to the elaborate rituals that would define their civilization for millennia to come. The myth of the afterlife, of the journey to the field of reeds, was being given a tangible foundation, a physical preparation. The symbolic explanation is clear. This wasn't just preserving a body, it was preparing a vessel, a sacred container for the soul's arduous voyage, ensuring its integrity for eternity. It marked the moment when the perishable became, through human ingenuity and belief, truly enduring. The mystery of these ancient mummies, predating the very pharaohs whose golden masks define Egyptian death, forces us to reevaluate history itself. They are not merely relics but echoes, resonating from a time when the world was new and raw, when humanity first grappled with the terrifying finality of existence. They speak of a period before monumental tombs, before vast empires, a time when the very first stirrings of a complex spirituality began to take root in the fertile crescent of human consciousness. These aren't just discoveries. They are a profound recalibration of our understanding of civilization's dawn, pushing the boundaries of sophisticated belief further back into the shadows of prehistory. Before the meticulous embalmers, before the grand temples and the carefully planned necropolises, there was a simpler world. Imagine nascent communities clustered along the life-giving Nile, their days consumed by the rhythm of the flood and the sun. Their understanding of death, while certainly tinged with sorrow, was likely pragmatic, immediate. When a loved one died, they were returned to the earth, often in a shallow pit, perhaps with a few personal possessions, a gesture of affection more than a complex ritual. This was, in a sense, their sheltered upbringing, a period of nascent belief, where the immediate physical reality of death held sway. The cycle of life and death was observed in nature, in the annual rebirth of the land, but the human soul's journey remained largely undefined, a misty frontier of the unknown. Then came the desert, an indifferent and powerful force, the very canvas upon which this profound change would be etched. These early people living on the fringes of the vast, arid landscape would often bury their dead not in the fertile, damp soil of the valley but in the dry, hot sands of the desert's edge. This was not a conscious act of preservation, but a practical one, perhaps due to ease of digging or proximity to their temporary settlements. It was in these unassuming, shallow graves that a specific, accidental event unfolded, an observation that would shatter their sheltered perceptions and forever alter the trajectory of human history. The searing heat and extreme aridity of the desert sands worked a subtle, miraculous transformation. The body, rather than decaying into dust, began a slow, natural desiccation. Moisture was wicked away, bacteria inhibited, and the delicate tissues, instead of putrefying, dried and hardened. When by chance one of these graves was disturbed, perhaps by a shifting dune or an animal, the living would confront the preserved dead. Not a skeletal remnant, but a recognizable form, a sleeping figure, their features often eerily intact, their hair and skin still present, albeit shrunken and darkened. This wasn't decay, this was stasis. This was the specific event, the profound, accidental revelation. Imagine the awe, the terror, the dawning comprehension. It was a glimpse across the veil, a tangible argument against absolute oblivion. This was not the end, it was merely a pause. The body, the vessel of the individual, had endured. This accidental mummification, a gift from the desert, was a revelation that planted the first seed of eternity in the human heart. It was a confrontation with their own mortality, yes, but also a sudden, breathtaking vision of its potential transcendence. The desert had, without intention, offered a prophecy. Mythology often speaks of a hero's descent into the underworld, a journey through darkness to emerge into light. Think of Orpheus venturing into Hades to retrieve Eurydice, or the Mesopotamian goddess Inanna's perilous journey through the seven gates. These tales are symbolic of a profound human desire to conquer death, to bring back what is lost, to defy the finality of separation. The accidental discovery of naturally preserved bodies in the desert was, for these ancient people, their own collective descent into the underworld of understanding. They didn't physically travel there, but their minds did, confronting the stark reality of death and finding, unexpectedly, a loophole, a glimmer of hope that the journey might not be one way. The rational, symbolic explanation of this moment is simple yet profound. The accidental mummy became a Rosetta Stone for the afterlife. It wasn't just a dead body, it was a physical testament to the possibility of continuity. It suggested that the essence of a person, their spirit, their consciousness, might have a physical anchor, a point of return or transition. The body was no longer just a temporary dwelling, but a crucial component for the eternal journey. If the body could endure, perhaps the soul could too, and perhaps, just perhaps, the two were inextricably linked. The preservation of the physical became a proxy for the preservation of the metaphysical. This profound insight led to a collective transformation. The initial pragmatic burials began to evolve. People started to mimic the desert's work. They would still bury their dead in the hot sand, often in a fetal position, wrapped in mats or skins, but now there was a conscious intent. They would place grave goods, pots of food and drink, tools, adornments, not just as sentimental tributes, but as provisions for the journey ahead. The deliberate inclusion of these items suggests a nascent belief in a destination, an afterlife where these provisions would be needed. The simple grave became a staging ground, a departure lounge for the soul. The practice of natural mummification, observed and then subtly imitated, began to morph into something more intentional, more ritualistic. The understanding grew that if the physical integrity of the body was maintained, the deceased could somehow continue their existence, perhaps in another realm, perhaps waiting for a rebirth. This wasn't merely about preserving a corpse to avoid the unpleasantness of decay. It was about ensuring the conditions were right for the soul's perilous voyage. The body became a crucial component of the spiritual economy, a sacred vessel whose integrity was paramount for the successful passage into eternity. This early stage of intentional yet still natural mummification was a societal breakthrough. It revealed humanity's innate drive to defy oblivion, to find meaning in death beyond mere cessation. It transformed the raw grief of loss into a structured hope, a tangible action that could be taken to safeguard a loved one's future. The desert, once seen as a barren, hostile place, became an unwitting accomplice in humanity's quest for immortality, a silent teacher revealing the secrets of preservation. The very landscape became imbued with spiritual significance, the guardian of the dead. This was the pivotal moment, the true birth of a death culture that would eventually blossom into the complex tapestry of pharaonic Egypt. It was not a single pharaoh's decree, but a slow, collective dawning, a profound shift in consciousness. The accidental mummy, unearthed from its sandy slumber, had delivered a message from beyond the grave, a message of continuity, of enduring presence. The sheltered upbringing of simple, unadorned burials was shattered by the stark reality of natural preservation, giving rise to a new, powerful belief. This wasn't the end of a life, it was the beginning of an eternal journey, and humanity, through careful observation and burgeoning belief, had found a way to prepare for it. The personal breakthrough shared by an entire nascent civilization was the realization that death was not an ending, but a transformation, and that they held the power to facilitate that sacred passage.